Hello, hey, hi, and welcome back to AttunePod, the podcast that offers you reality checks for your 20s. And today, this is a topic that is dear and personal to us both. It's all about grad schemes and their opposing half, grad jobs, right? So grad schemes and grad jobs, the differences between them both, which one you should go for. And honestly, all the tea from our experiences haven't been on a grad scheme.
So I think with these things, it's always good to sort of actually just set out what we are talking to and just define some of the key concepts. And I think it's good for us to clearly define what a grad scheme is relative to a grad job. Now, a grad scheme is usually like a structured program, usually structured in the concept of like the term. So you're usually about 2 to 3 years with a specific company, and they sort of put in place how they want the nature of the scheme to be over the course of that period of time. Whereas a graduate job is usually just, as long as you're a graduate, you can go straight to desk. You can, any role, there's no real structure. The company won't dictate how long you spent doing what. Is completely you're on, like you have your own discretion to do what you want effectively in that role. And I really do think sometimes, again, especially given how competitive getting a job out of uni is right now, people just take whatever they're given. And I think it's so important to actually distinguish what is what. Like, what is a grad scheme? What's a grad job? And also, what are the pros and cons that come with each?
What are you signing yourself up for?
Oh my gosh, it's so important to know. And I feel like, I mean, given that we've both been on grad schemes, it's worth maybe even sharing like a bit of like an insight into our journey onto that grad scheme before we delve into what the pros and cons are of a grad scheme.
So I was a bit of, as you said, taking anything that I got. And so I actually had a grad job before I joined this grad scheme that
so you had experience
just
of
finished.
both.
Yes, I had experience of both. I mean, it was messaged as a scheme. Reality was a grad job. I'm not going to lie to you. So I took whatever. And in doing so, the reason being was because I didn't come from a technical background. I didn't have an idea as to what exactly I wanted to do. It was very much a case of, let me go and get as much experience as possible, go around the business, see what is that I like and what I don't like, and find that pocket where hopefully my passions and skills will cross and align. That was my reasoning or my attitude looking for grad schemes / grad jobs. So that's the reasons why I didn't choose a grad job, is because I didn't want to be bound to a department. Whereas with a grad scheme, you essentially have, or in theory, you have free reign around the business.
So I also was on a graduate scheme, but I can't say I've done a grad job. I mean, internships don't really count, do they? So yeah, okay. So been on a grad scheme, and for me, my rationale behind that was I always knew I wanted sort of to be in finance. I just didn't know where in finance. So I thought it's a great way to try different things, see what works, see what doesn't work. And also I've always been very big on wherever it is that I want to pursue as a career, I want to pursue it to the fullest extent. So like I want to be the most qualified in it. So I didn't want to just hop into anything and then go down like years and years and years of exams just to find out I don't actually enjoy it. So I found that a grad scheme would be a good way to just trial and error, see what works before I fully commit to really going the long distance. And I think, while we're on the topic, it's really good to actually define and actually set out the parameters of a grad scheme. I think it'd be good to start talking about what the advantages of a grad scheme are.
Let's be positive.
Start with the good. Let's start with the good.
Let's start with the good. So I think obviously the first thing is, so I alluded to before, and I think that a massive pro is that you get to go around the business, especially if you don't know what you want to do. You get to go around, you get to explore, you get to work with different teams, you get to find out what you would want in a manager, what you wouldn't like in a manager, what areas you would prefer, or areas you're going to run from the hills for. And because of this as well, and then like tied into that advantage is the fact that you're not by yourself. You're not typically by yourself when you go into a grad scheme. There's a group of other individuals that you're able to talk to and find out how their experiences was as well, which again kind of alludes to the fact, or gives you some kind of indication as to where you would want to go, where you wouldn't want to go. What others would you say?
Oh, I think dependent on the scheme that you're on, it is sometimes really beneficial to have like a structured training program. Like I know a lot of the accountancy schemes have a very structured training program of 4 days you're in the office, 1 day you go out to study, and you're studying very specific qualifications, so that at the end of the 2 or 3 years, you're a chartered accountant, and it's like very set in stone. Other schemes, less structured, but we're going to get to that.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that one.
But I think, especially for somebody fresh out of uni, where I think sometimes with uni, they teach you so much theory, but you're like, okay, how does this all work in practice? If you are in that position where you want that practical, just like hands-on experience without committing to something long-term, that structured training program, it really is beneficial. I think also a lot of the time, like she alluded to, you are joining with a cohort, and I think it's also worth mentioning that graduate schemes are expensive. On part of the company, that is, they invest tons into just having a cohort of young talent join the business. So a lot of the time they will push you to really, like, they want to keep you at the end of the day. No one's going to invest however many thousands of pounds just for you to come and go. They want to keep you and effectively have you guys as like the next generation of leaders within the company. So part and parcel of that is they really do put an effort into you developing your network, be that through mentorship, through coaching, through buddy systems. And a lot of the time when you start straight to desk, you don't really get that. You're sort of, unless you're very proactive, which I would encourage if that's the position you're in, unless you're super proactive, no one's going to hand to you, oh, here are some mentors, here are some coaches, go off. Literally, and like you have to do it by yourself.
Coaches, and also we have to say our networking sessions that we get, we get to speak to senior, we got to speak to senior professionals within the business, where again, you may not essentially have the access open to you if you are on a grad job. I think also it stems as well that you do tend to get professional qualifications as well. Again, because the company really would like to invest in you and ensure that by the end of it, you know, you are upskilled. We've got an episode coming out on that, by the way. But you'll be upskilled, and, you know, you would want to you'll be able to fast track your career within the company. So that's a major benefit that you mentioned as well. Another one, I think, of course, is salary. With grad schemes, you tend to be paid more, slightly more, than grad jobs, as well as often the name that comes with the company that offers the grad scheme. You tend to find the big four, so PwC, KPMG, etc. Firms of that nature, FTSE 100 companies. Those big companies tend to offer grad schemes, whereas not every single company would offer a grad scheme. So yeah, you do have those advantages as well.
I think one of the things actually also to point out is sometimes when you go straight to desk, you have like a probationary period where you may not be entitled to certain things. Whereas like as a grad, you're just taken in as like a full-time employee. You can get all the benefits that all the other members of staff get, the annual leave, the just extra, every extra that everybody else gets. So again, if that is something of importance to you, perhaps that's also worth considering. But we touched on, you know, the good side, the funny side. We tried to start this off, you know, on positively. But as with anything, nothing is sort of perfect all through. So what are some of the not so glamorous things about grad schemes that we probably ought to share with the audience?
So we mentioned that structure at the beginning was something that was a benefit. It can also be a double-edged sword, and in my opinion, be negative as well. So you have in R1, we had 8 months, 3 8-month rotations, which meant that we ideally had to stay within those parameters before we wanted to go and do something else. More time, you may know from the get-go of a rotation,
or even halfway through,
even worse halfway through, that this is not something that you want to do, you have no interest in it, and now you're biding your time until the 8 months. So, or until the period of that term finishes. So there's that side of things when it comes to the rigidness of the structure. And also because there's a lot of rules, because there's so much invested into the scheme, there's also a lot of rules around what you can and cannot do. I luckily was given the exception to get out of one of my rotations early, but that's because it just blew up into a massive thing. A lot of that before was a thing of, well, try this, try that, try and stick it out, even though I knew, or we all knew, that it wasn't working out. So that would be a massive thing, the rigidity of it all. As well as another con for me is this feeling of always being new.
Oh my goodness.
We can all both talk on this. having to always be every 8 months or every new rotation you go into, you have to now go and you're encouraged to go and speak to the team and the external team and the stakeholders and learn a completely new thing, like a completely new landscape of the team, of the work that you will be doing, expectations. You have to now cater to a completely different manager. Like, you do have to be you're expected to just like context switch, like to be fluid. And don't get me wrong, that's life, and we do context switch throughout our lives. However, to do that and feel constantly new and having to constantly prove yourself every 8 months, in our case, is very tiring.
It gets exhausting. It really, really, really does. I think a summary of what I said to I can't remember, but as I was like leaving or rolling off the grad scheme into my permanent role, I did it slightly earlier as well. So I was supposed to be in my last rotation for 8 months. I think I left after 5, and genuinely my summary of it was, you just get I got tired of the juvenile title because it comes with juvenile responsibilities. That's literally what I said when the guy asked me, because genuinely, in as much as the company, I think also another thing to bear in mind is, because grad schemes are rotational, the team you're in at that present point in time isn't fully funding you. So they don't really have...
They're not funding you.
Well, they're partially. No, they are. Sometimes they're partially. So say if your salary is like 40k and you have 4 rotations, they may put like 5k to contribute. Yeah, I
always thought it was a free pair of hands that they were getting.
Well, depending on the scheme. I think on our side it was.
Oh,
but on the other side of the business,
side it wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they, for lack of a better word, do not give a heck. Like, they just want you to pick up any bits they don't want to do, and then you end up sort of spending 8 months cleaning up everyone's mess, and then you sort of finish and think, did I actually develop in this role?
So see, now I will caveat that with that being the type of managing team that you have.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
absolutely.
What's it with me? So my first rotation, I was limited in what I could do because I didn't have qualifications. So that meant that I was just picking up, but they did give me ownership over certain pieces of work. My second rotation, let's not talk about it. And then my third rotation, that trust was there from the get-go, because I established, if you listen to one of our upcoming episodes on boundaries, actually, I had set up a conversation from the get-go with my manager, and literally told him, this is what I want, this is what I like, this is what I need, right? And one of those things was ownership. So from the get-go, I was put on, don't get me wrong, it was a tough-ass, like really, really tough project. And I was thrown in the deep end. It was something completely new and I had to adapt. But the trust was there with my manager, who allowed me to take ownership of that for the next 8 months, ownership of that project. So I think I would caveat that with, it depends on the manager.
Okay.
Like managing the team that you have.
That's a really good point.
As well as the ability, like qualification-wise.
Yeah, to be fair, that is actually a really good point. I think the other thing as well, I think we mentioned that sometimes, depending on the nature of the grad scheme, it can like quicken your career progression, but it can also serve to do the opposite in terms of, and again, needs to be caveated because this is dependent on the sort of scheme you're on. Yeah. If you're, say, for example, you are in an accountancy graduate scheme where you may move around, but like not like great, like significant changes. It might be that you move from auditing banks to hospitals, but you're still doing auditing. So at the end of the 2 years, yes, you've done rotations, but your skill set is still very much strong. If you're in a graduate scheme where your skill set that you could be acquiring is so broad, like you could be in marketing one day, tech the next,
accountancy the next,
investment management the next, you sort of end up with, yes, a breadth of experience, but where's the depth? And then you end up in a situation where you look at your peers that have gone straight to desk and they're 2 years in, they're ready for promotion. Exactly. And I'm still just like, even right now, still just about landing into a role where now I can start working towards a promotion, because everyone sees you as, yeah, you've been around for 2 years, but what's like what can we put you to? Like they hear my name and think, oh, she's a grad, rather than, oh, she's our accountant, oh, she's a lawyer, oh, she's this, oh, she's that. And that can come as a byproduct of having a very varied like set of rotations.
100%. Like that is a massive problem of the scheme, in the sense that on top of being brand new all the time, now you have to actively try and think forward as to how this will all line up for your future. And if it doesn't, then you're effectively wasting 8 months. Now, you can always come in with the transferable skills, etc. and all that. However, we all know, okay, if you're listening to this episode, we all know that when you go to LinkedIn or Indeed or Read, whatever the case may be, and you go to that job board, they're not asking for transferable skills. They're asking for 5 years history or 2 years history, 3 years. And you're like, I can't provide that.
Then you find yourself stringing, just like trying to like clutch it.
And what it comes with, I think what a lot of this underlies with is uncertainty. It's a massive thing that we found and discussed when we were on the grad scheme. There's a lot of uncertainty because you do not know essentially what the end is going to look like. You can create it, and by all means, that's good. Like you're forced to be proactive, because if you don't, then unfortunately for you, you're going to be grasping at those straws and taking anything willy-nilly to keep you being paid. And no one wants to be on a grad salary forever and ever.
No, absolutely true. And also quite a cynical, but I think also quite a pertinent view as well, is a lot of the time, like I said, there's a separation of people that will be managing you on the scheme to the people that run the scheme, in that your managers are obviously people looking after you day to day, but the people running the scheme might be in HR. And a lot of the time they have their own metrics of, we want our grads to stay at a company for 5 years. So to be quite frank, HR do not give a heck what you do, how you feel, as long as they're hitting their metrics of keeping you around for 5 years. So actually it works in their favor to lock you in for 2 years. Even if you're not happy, at least that's then 2 years out of their 5. And that's, working towards their metrics. So I don't know, I feel like it needs to be, I feel like the optimal graduate scheme would be, you start on with the structure, but once you find what you want, you can roll off. Quite cynically, I think perhaps the optimal graduate scheme would be like you come on, you have the structured rotations, but as soon as you know what you want, you have the free reign to go and pursue that. But that's just my 2 pence.
That's just my 2 pence.
What
you do if it's up to you. But yeah, no, definitely. So we've talked about grad schemes in pretty intensely, because you know what, it's what we know, sort of experience. And then these points that we have coming up is from people that we know, essentially, and their experiences that we've heard of, etc. But just keep in mind, we haven't experienced a grad job directly ourselves. So grad job, we've identified it as it being something that you go straight to desk in. It's a department that you can kind of rotate around if you would like to, or you simply just do that role. Advantages, there's stuff positive.
I feel like with grad jobs, there definitely is a much more diverse because literally if you go on the job board, it's only really the biggest companies who have the capacity and the HR teams to support a graduate scheme are offering it. Most middle-sized or smaller firms don't have that, so they'll just give you like more like straight to desk, and so that makes the overwhelming majority of jobs on the market. So in terms of the scope of getting one, you have more chance of getting one of those than a grad scheme. So definitely a broad range of opportunities. I think the other thing as well is that you sort of start from, so you're not on a fixed salary. Like on a graduate scheme, your salary for a lot of the time is either capped at what it is, or it's capped at a certain amount each year in terms of increase. Whereas on a straight to desk role, if you're an incredible employee, you could be promoted within 6 months, a year, dependent on the nature of the company. So I think that flexibility point that comes with grad jobs is definitely worth noting. I don't know if you've got any more that come to mind.
So for me, I think another thing is, again, probably touching more on the autonomy side of things. If you have more control over what your day-to-day will look like for the next, if you compare the 2 years versus the 2 years that you do in a grad job versus the 2 years you do on a scheme, the individual in the job will have a lot more autonomy. There won't be so many things that they'll be expected to attend or go to take part in, etc., or structures you will have to go through. It's very much more down to whether or not you would like to do so. And it's also a really good thing if you know what you want to do from the jump as well. When you know what you want to do from the jump, it makes it a lot easier, I think, for you to just go straight down the grad job role and be like, cool, time for me to make some money. So for those people that, they know exactly what they want, it's much easier. Not even much easier, but, grad job definitely will speak to them a lot more as well.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point as well. And also career progression, like you're not prevented, because I don't think you're allowed to be promoted when you're a grad. Like you've never heard of a senior grad, like a grad.
There's even some, that grad title really pisses me off. But there's even, because we didn't talk about it enough, to be honest, but I'm just going to throw it back out there. Like we literally were a free pair of hands, literally. Anyways, and they took advantage. And it's grad jobs, right? I feel like you don't have that title. You have that title for as long as you want to have that title for.
Effectively, yeah.
Definitely. But I mean, at the same time, there's things that grad jobs have, like, don't have. For example, with the scheme, you get a mentorship, you get mentors, you get coaches, you get professional qualifications. All these times with senior people, networking, that's literally thrown at you for free. And you do get to take advantage of that. Whereas on a job, you don't necessarily have that. You do need to be a lot more proactive. There's not much, if any, correct me if I'm wrong, structure within the training for grad jobs. Or at least it's not the same level as grad schemes. Could also be slower career progression as well on that side of front things, because you're staying in the same role for quite a while. Versus...
And also the company don't have like a written obligation, like a contractual obligation to like pay, not sponsor your qualifications. Like some companies, it's like if they want to, or if you've got a good manager, then perhaps they'll make the budget for it. But it's not a given. Like there are so many people that I've heard of who are in full-time jobs but are paying for the qualifications out of their own pocket because the employer just don't feel like they are obliged to do so. But I feel like we've had a bit of like a debrief and a bit of a rundown with regards to the pros and the cons of both grad schemes and grad jobs. But I think it's always good to provide like a framework for people even looking to acquire one or the other, just for them to sort of like navigate the job market. Like what are the factors or the key factors that you think they should consider when beginning to explore these opportunities and seeing what's for them?
Yeah, definitely consider what you want for yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what you want to do? Do you not know what you want to do?
And that's a valid decision. Like, I know some people, when you hear that, you think I have to pick one. But it's like, no, you can say, I don't know. And that's completely valid.
If you don't know, then go for the grad scheme. If you don't know what you want to do in the future, go for the grad scheme. Because you have a lot more opportunities. It's a lot more competitive to get into, yes. But if you do secure one, you are able to find out for yourself what you'd like to do, or at least what you don't want to do in due time. With a grad job, I would say, is for individuals who already know what they want to do, already have an idea as to what they would like to do. I also should caveat with it by saying that just because you do a grad job doesn't mean in the future you can't go for a grad scheme.
Oh my gosh,
you can always apply for a grad scheme
and vice
later
versa.
on.
That's absolutely
Definitely. If you do find that it might not be something that you want to do. Also, I would say look at your job market. If the industry that you would like to go into is competitive, maybe it's best to get your foot in the door through the grad job versus trying to get onto the scheme. However, again, try your luck at the scheme. Try, period. Like, definitely do so. I mean, this is a bit of a humble brag, but just to put it into perspective, our year when we applied, there was literally 4,000 plus applicants and only 12 people got accepted to our scheme.
And that's not even just in London, like
that was across the country. Yeah, and abroad in Canada. So I think you do need to take into consideration the actual competitiveness of it all. Definitely try your hand at it 100%. But just to put into perspective, that landscape, especially for certain industries.
Agree. And I think also, like alluding to what you said about the knowing who you are and what you want, I think is also really important to actually understand how best you learn as an individual.
Yeah.
If you're similar to me, where it's like, I like structure in everything that I do, I like structure. I like knowing processes and frameworks before I can really understand the granular detail of things, or things really fully make sense to me. If perhaps you're that way inclined, then maybe going on a sort of a scheme where you're literally in the crooks, like maybe a grad job where you're straight to desk, you're seeing everything from A to Z and you can fully understand everything, then that works. Or if you're just a hands-on person, you learn on the job, that could be for you. Whereas if you're slightly more like less inclined, maybe you want to sort of try different things out, maybe you're slightly more of an abstract thinker, or maybe sometimes even people that want like a broader scope. You know, some people don't actually want to specialize.
Yeah.
They want to become like a consultant or like a strategist. If you want that breadth of experience, or you actually want the softer skills developments, because like the personal development stuff that you get, the mentorship, the networking, public speaking training, like all this is your softer skills.
Yeah.
So if you're that way inclined, then perhaps a grad scheme would work better for you. But I think ultimately it's all about just knowing who you are, what you want out of your early career, and then I guess finding the best routes to get there.
I think also on top of what Babe said is also you need to know if you're comfortable with uncertainty.
Oh my goodness.
If you're
Yeah.
someone that you don't think you're able to thrive, or not even thrive, you're able to survive, let's change the word, survive through uncertainty and come out the other end sane, then schemes probably aren't the best way to go down. And I would say go to a job instead, grad job. However, on the other hand, if you know, all right, I don't need to know all the answers so long as I know kind of the direction I'm going in, then hell, I'm going to go through a grad scheme. I'll say to go for a grad scheme because it's just knowing that direction at the end of the day. At the end of the day, no, not me repeating myself, but me repeating myself, it's not one size fits all. A grad scheme is not going to apply to everyone, and a grad job is not going to apply to everyone else. As I mentioned earlier, you can always start one and then go into another later. Like, you don't need to stay on this path. It's not the end of be all end all. And I would definitely say speak to mentors that you have in your life, older people who have gone through the experience. Drop us a message on like TikTok or whatever the case may be, Instagram, YouTube, as to whether or not this is something that you know, if you have any questions as to whether this is something that you should embark on or do. Seek advice elsewhere, because you don't always have to find the answer from yourself all the time. But no, definitely, I think grad schemes and grad jobs, they both have their perks and cons. Ours, probably might be a little bit more biased. We might be a little bit more biased. But at the end of the day, it's down to you. Take the time, see if this is exactly what you would like to do, or see what exactly is that you do want to do in the future, where you are, how comfortable you are with uncertainty, and then go from there. And to be honest, I think we could wrap it up there.
I think it's been a very well-informed episode. I think particularly quite timely as well, given that we are entering the months of, application seasons opening up and the like. So if you really enjoyed this episode, feel free to give us a thumbs up on YouTube and follow us at the AttunePod on Spotify and Apple Music, and also Instagram and TikTok. And as always, like we always say, this is our reality check to you, and what you do with it is completely up to you.
Yes, whether you cash it in is completely up to you, and we'll see you next week. Bye.